In this video, we explore the eye-opening story of a black luxury store owner who goes undercover as a regular customer in one of his own stores. Unaware of his true identity, the store manager shocks him with racially biased assumptions. But the next day, the manager's world is turned upside down when the man returns, not as an ordinary customer, but as the powerful owner with a lesson in justice. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more impactful stories. Thank you for watching. When a black owner of a luxury chain goes undercover at one of his own locations, the manager makes racist assumptions about him and insults him without knowing who he really is. The following day, when the man returns as the strong owner with a lesson rather than as a silent customer, the manager's entire world falls apart. Unfairness born to working-class parents in Harlem, Matt Blackwell's journey had been anything but simple. He watched the bustling city of Manhattan unfold beneath him from his corner office window. He had grown accustomed to this sight over the years, but today it felt different. His empire, a chain of upscale luxury stores stretching across the nation from New York to Los Angeles, was a testament to years of hard work, sacrifice, and determination as a black man in a predominantly white industry. Matt had to deal with prejudice from a young age. He knew that his skin color carried with it a set of presumptions that others imposed on him without hesitation. Teachers told him to aim for something realistic when he expressed his desire to become a businessman, and classmates made fun of his ambition, assuming that he could never overcome his circumstances. However, as he advanced through the ranks of the business world, first as a young, hungry entrepreneur and later as a titan of luxury retail, he learned that success could never fully shield him from the ugliness of racism. Even though he owned a multi-million-dollar company, he was still frequently viewed with skepticism. His wealth and status were scrutinized more than celebrated, and he had learned to expect subtle, sneaky discrimination, the kind that often came disguised in politeness. What bothered him the most, though, was when his success came in the form of his empire. The rumors about one of his store managers, Ethan Caldwell, had affected him more severely than he had anticipated for weeks because his blood, sweat, and tears served as a forum for others to express the very bigotry he had struggled to overcome. According to several sources, Matt had heard rumors about the poisonous environment at one of his flagship stores in Soho from staff members and even some customers. Ethan operated the business as a personal femme, serving wealthy CL customers while rejecting those who didn't match his ideal of what a luxury shopper ought to look like. For example, although the whispers didn't specifically address race, Matt was aware that it had always been a factor. The idea that luxury should be inclusive and that people from all backgrounds should feel welcome in his stores was part of what set Matt's brand apart from the stuffy, exclusive establishments that had dominated the industry for so long. He had trained his staff to live up to these ideals, so how had someone like Ethan slipped through the cracks? Matt leaned back in his chair, fingers planted under his chin. On paper, Ethan appeared to be the ideal manager due to his stellar sales figures and his ability to cultivate relationships with high-end clients, which brought in a steady stream of revenue. However, Matt knew better than to rely solely on numbers. He needed to see it for himself to determine whether the rumors were true before acting, and he needed to experience what his customers, his real customers, were going through. He turned away from the window, having already decided that he would visit the store, but not as Matt Blackwell, the chain's owner, no. He had previously visited stores in disguise to assess customer experience when he first started his business, but this time it felt different because it wasn't about enhancing service but rather about facing something much more personal. He would go undercover and blend in as just another face in the crowd. Later that evening, as he searched his closet for the ideal disguise, he encountered prejudice in his own home. Matt smiled bitterly, noting the irony that a man who could enter any of his stores and purchase anything he desired would now have to pose as. To be treated fairly, he dressed simply, putting on sneakers, jeans, and a black hoodie. He left the Rolex in the drawer and put on a simple wristwatch instead, and as he stood in front of the mirror, pulling the hood over his head, a flood of memories came flooding back to him. He recalled the times he had been followed by security guards in department stores, the sales associates who had fired him before he earned his first $1 million, and the landlords who refused to let him live in their high-rise buildings because they believed a black man couldn't afford to live there. Before long, he realized that this undercover mission wasn't just about Ethan. It was about facing the racism that had plagued his life and career, even when he believed he had outrun it. It was about the implicit belief that a black man didn't belong in certain places unless he had a platinum card to prove it. Let's see how this plays out. Nestled in the center of Manhattan's upscale shopping district, the Soho store was one of Matt's largest and most lucrative locations. It drew a diverse clientele of tourists, socialites, and the city's elite, but recently rumors circulated that it wasn't as welcoming as it once was. Matt muttered to himself as he picked up his keys and left his penthouse. When Matt arrived in the evening, the streets were still bustling, but the store was closing for the day. As he got closer to the entrance, he experienced the same sense of excitement because, to him, this was more than just a store, it was a reflection of everything he had built and everything he had worked for. From the ground up. But as soon as he entered through the glass doors, he noticed that the air was cold. The opulent interior appeared unwelcoming due to its sleek black and gold antique displays and polished marble floors. Matt approached a display case with a variety of designer watches, but neither the security guard at the door nor the salespeople, who were too preoccupied to gawk at a wealthy-looking couple in fitted suits, acknowledged him. He waited idly, looking at the watches, but no one came. He could feel the familiar sting of invisibility. Moving towards the back of the store, he picked up a high-end leather bag and examined it closely while feigning interest. A few seconds later, he saw the manager. The sting he had experienced as a child was not new, but it was still infuriating. Ethan Caldwell came out of the staff area, his hawk-like eyes sweeping the store. Ethan exuded confidence and control, and Matt knew what was coming because he was tall, clean-cut, and immaculately dressed in a slim-fitting suit. Before he saw that look, Ethan saw a black man in a hoodie handling a $5,000 bag, and that was all he needed to form an opinion. He didn't see a potential customer. The store manager, Ethan Caldwell, was approaching him with deliberate steps as Matt gripped the leather bag, feeling the smooth material beneath his fingertips. He had bought this type of bag for himself and others countless times, but this time it felt different, the weight of judgment in the air almost suffocating. His eyes were fixed on Matt. Curling the corner of his mouth in a subtle sneer, Matt could see the wheels turning in Ethan's mind as he marched up, slicing through the air of luxury like a knife through tension. Ethan didn't bother with the pretense of politeness. He had already assessed him and made his decision. Matt was a black man who didn't belong, so excuse me, and Ethan didn't care about the quality of his clothes or the quiet assurance in his posture. Ethan's voice sounded cold and clipped. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Matt turned, still holding the leather bag, and grinned merely for the sake of looking, more out of habit than anything else. "I've been considering getting a new bag. This one drew my attention." As if to confirm his suspicions, Ethan hardly looked at the bag, instead glancing at Matt's sneakers and hoodie. "That's quite an expensive item," he asked in a tone dripping with condescension. "Are you sure it's in your price range?" Matt took offense, but he maintained his composure because years of dealing with this kind of covert racism had made him adept at managing his emotions. "It never got any simpler. I understand the cost," Matt answered steadily. "I'll let you know if I need any assistance." Ethan remained motionless, leaning forward slightly and folding his arms across his chest as though to assert authority. "I just want to make sure you understand," he said, narrowing his eyes. "This isn't the kind of store where you browse for fun. It's a high-end establishment and we ECT serious customers." Matt inhaled slowly and tightened his hold on the handle of the bag. "I think I know what kind of store this is," he said. Matt could see the uneasiness in the eyes of the sales associates nearby, who were also observing, but none of them intervened. The silent complicity was all too familiar. Ethan said softly, meeting his gaze, and the tension between them grew. Ethan looked around as if seeking support from his staff. "I will have to request that you leave," Ethan said. "We don't allow loitering, and if you're not here to buy something, you're wasting my time," in a low, firm voice. For a considerable amount of time, Matt gazed at him. This was not the first time The irony was nearly unbearable. He could feel his blood boiling and the urge to lash out rising within him, but this wasn't the time for that. He had come here to see the truth for himself, and now that truth was staring back at him through the smug face of Ethan Caldwell. He had been kicked out of a store, in fact, and this moment was an echo of dozens of experiences throughout his life. Matt returned the bag to the shelf. He carefully straightened and adjusted his hoodie, nodded again to himself rather than to Ethan, and turned to go. As he did so, he felt the staff members' eyes on his back and their judgment clinging to him like smoke, but he didn't hesitate. "Have a nice day," Ethan said in a sarcastic voice. Outside, Matt could practically hear the smirk in his voice as the cool Soho air struck him. Like a slap in the face, he stood for a moment, letting the tension drain from his body. It took every ounce of self-control not to march back into the store and reveal who he really was, to watch Ethan's face twist in horror as he realized he had just thrown out the owner of the entire chain. But Matt knew better than to act on impulse. He was a businessman, and a good businessman knew how to wait for the right moment to strike. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was A text from his assistant Lauren reminding him of a board meeting the next morning. Matt smiled to himself, already picturing the look on Ethan's face when he walked through the store's doors tomorrow, dressed not as a casual shopper but as the CEO. That night Matt replayed the day's events in his mind. He sat at the dinner table pushing his food around his plate as the memory of Ethan's smug face lingered. It wasn't just about Ethan, it was about what Ethan represented. This was bigger than one racist store manager. This was a reminder that no matter how successful he became, no matter how many millions he made, there were still people who saw him as lesser, people like Ethan who would never think a man like Matt could be their boss, much less the head of an empire. The following morning, Matt arrived at his corporate office early, wearing one of his finest suits. The crisp navy fabric fit his tall frame perfectly, and the polished leather shoes gleamed as he walked. He felt powerful, not just because of the suit but also because of what he was about to do. He had built his company from nothing and nothing else. Matt put down his fork and wiped his mouth with a napkin, his resolve hardened. Nobody, not even Ethan Caldwell, would take that away from him. He said, "Let Ethan know I'll be visiting the Soho store this afternoon, and I want him and the entire staff ready for my arrival." As he entered his office, Lauren. At noon, the Soho store was a hive of activity as the staff was told that Matt Blackwell was coming. Lauren nodded, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. She didn't ask questions because she knew Matt well enough to know that when he was like this, something big was about to happen. The chain's elusive chief executive officer would be visiting personally. When Matt arrived, the atmosphere in the store changed dramatically. Ethan, the showman, had gone into overdrive to make sure everything was flawless because he wanted to impress the man who held the keys to his future. The same employees who had disregarded him the day before were now standing at attention, grinning broadly and speaking eagerly. Wearing the same slim-fitting suit, Ethan was in the middle of everything, giving orders like a drill sergeant and making sure the store sparkled in every way. Ethan's self-assured smile momentarily faltered as he saw Matt's face recognition flicker behind his expression, but the manager swiftly pushed it aside, telling him that this was a different man, one deserving of respect, not the hoodie-clad stranger he had dismissed the day before. Mr. Blackwell. This was the polished manager who catered to Manhattan's elite. "Welcome to the Soho store. We've been waiting for you," Ethan said with a big smile as he stepped forward and held out his hand. Matt gave him a handshake. Like a live wire, the weight of the moment settled between them. "I've heard a lot about this place," but Ethan didn't recognize him yet. Matt said, "I wanted to see how things are running here," in a calm, smooth voice. Matt replied, looking around the store and observing the staff's sudden eagerness to serve, "But I had an interesting experience here yesterday." Ethan puffed out his chest, obviously happy to have the CEO's attention. "We run a tight ship here and our clients expect nothing but the best, and we make sure to deliver." "I'm sure you do. As you can see, I didn't receive the kind reception I was hoping for when I came in looking for a new bag." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe there was a misunderstanding." Ethan's smile faltered. "No miscommunication. I didn't realize." Matt let the silence hang between them for a moment, savoring the shift in power. "Now you do." Ethan's eyes widened and his composure crumbled as realization dawned. "You personally escorted me out of the store," Matt said, his eyes locking onto Ethan's. Matt observed. Ethan's face was filled with horror as the manager's self-assured exterior collapsed in real time. Matt had expected this moment, but as it happened, he felt neither joy nor satisfaction. Ethan stammered, trying to gather his thoughts. This was just the cold weight of reality. It wasn't about proving Ethan wrong or getting revenge. It was about making things right, not just for himself but for every customer who had entered those doors and been treated the same way. "If I had known," Matt would have abruptly cut off his voice, "but I didn't realize it was you. Serene, I entered yesterday like any other customer, but instead of being greeted, I was treated as though I didn't belong because you assumed, based on my appearance, that I couldn't afford to shop here, and you weren't tactful about it. You shouldn't need to know someone's identity to treat them with basic respect." Ethan's face flushed red with a mixture of shame and terror. He looked around and saw the employees observing from a distance, their interest barely concealed. His eyes were filled with panic as Matt realized that his future was at stake. "I can describe Ethan. We've had problems with people coming in just to browse, and sometimes we have to be more selective with our attention." He stammered, his hands shaking a little. "That's an interesting way to put it, Ethan. I've worked hard to build this company from the ground up. I didn't inherit it or have it handed to me on a silver platter. I earned every bit of it by believing that luxury isn't just for the wealthy elite." Matt shook his head, cutting him off. "Anyone who appreciates quality and is prepared to make an investment should consider it." Matt could see the wheels turning in Ethan's head as he frantically searched for an explanation that would save him. Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the staff who were still watching the scene unfold. It was obvious that he hadn't expected this turn of events. "Mr. Blackwell, I get it." Ethan spoke in a shaky voice. "Please give me a chance to make amends. I made a mistake by not recognizing you and by treating you in that manner." Matt inhaled deeply, allowing the quiet to linger for a while. He could have simply walked away and fired Ethan on the spot, leaving him to pick up the pieces of his career, but Matt wasn't here to simply punish. He was here to ensure that everyone, not just Ethan, learned the lesson. The weight of Ethan's words felt hollow, like a man grasping for something that was already slipping through his fingers. Matt spoke in a measured tone. "I won't simply fire you, Ethan. That would be too simple. You would leave without learning anything, and you would probably make the same mistakes at your next job." A glimmer of hope flickered in Ethan's eyes as if he might be spared. "But no, you're going to stay. You're going to work here until the end of the month, and during that time you're going to personally greet every single customer who walks through that door. You'll offer them the same level of service you would for one of your high-profile clients, and you'll do it with a smile," Matt said in a low but firm tone. "On your face regardless of their identity or appearance." Ethan blinked, obviously surprised, but Mr. Blackwell Matt interrupted him by raising a hand. "You will learn the importance of treating every customer with respect. If you are unable to do so, you will be fired, and I will personally ensure that no one in this industry hires you again." Ethan appeared uncertain of how to react as the weight of Matt's words settled heavily on him, and his face flushed and his mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Matt nodded once. "Good, and if you'll pardon me, I have some other things to take care of." His hands were shaking as he nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." Matt turned and proceeded to the rear of the store, where Rebecca Hill, his regional manager, was waiting. Rebecca, a straightforward woman who had supported Matt in starting the company from the beginning, had been with him since the beginning. She had observed the entire exchange with her arms crossed and a tiny smile of approval on her lips. "Nice job," she said as Matt walked up to her. Matt shook his head and sighed. Rebecca nodded, her face softening. "You're right, but what you did just now sends a message to Ethan, the rest of the staff, and the customers that this type of behavior won't be accepted. I didn't do it for satisfaction. It's just exhausting. You know, this isn't the first time I've dealt with this, and it won't be the last." Matt looked around the store and saw that the other staff members were still teeming with anxiety, and he could sense that they were watching him. Some people are anxious while others are curious. He was aware that this would cause the company to ripple, so we needed to do more. Matt spoke in a firm voice. "I cannot want to implement this as a one-time measure. A training program on diversity and inclusion for the entire organization is necessary so that all managers and employees are in agreement about how we treat people from all backgrounds." "I've been waiting for you to say that. I'll get to work on it right away," Rebecca grinned. Matt nodded, "And even after I want Ethan gone, he should watch him closely in case he makes a mistake." Rebecca laughed. "I doubt he's going to." To take a chance after today, Matt gave himself permission to smile a little, but the burden of the day still weighed heavily on him. He had completed the necessary tasks, but it didn't make up for the frustration of constantly having to fight this battle. He had spent years establishing himself in a field that didn't expect him to succeed, only to discover that no amount of success could completely. As he left the store, the afternoon sun struck him, creating long shadows that people passed on the crowded streets of Soho protect him from the ugly things of prejudice. That evening, Matt returned to his penthouse, his mind still racing with the events of the day. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle below, but even though he felt satisfied that he had put things right, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more work to be done. To them, he was just another man in a suit, but to Matt, this was more than just another day. It was a reminder that the struggle for equality and respect was far from over. A notification buzzed on his phone, indicating that Rebecca had sent him a training program outline. "We'll finish this." The incident had spread like wildfire among the staff the following day, and Ethan, now humbled, took his place at the front of the store greeting customers with a nervous smile. Matt smiled and put his phone aside, but it wasn't just about what had happened with Ethan. It was about making sure that no one else in his company ever felt the way he had felt yesterday. Over the following few weeks, word spread throughout the company that Matt had personally handled the situation, and employees' respect for him grew. It became evident that this was a company that valued everyone regardless of their identity. In order to ensure that his managers understood the significance of what they were doing, Matt personally attended some of the sessions when he implemented the new diversity and inclusion training across all of his stores. He didn't want this to be merely a corporate checkbox. He wanted it to be a fundamental component of The culture of the business employees who had previously felt excluded started to speak up and share their stories after feeling heard, which had an instant impact. Even with all the progress, Matt knew there would always be more work to be done because the fight for equality couldn't be solved overnight and definitely wouldn't be solved by one man, but he had done his part and he would continue to do so by setting an example and making sure his stores were a place where everyone felt welcome. For the first time, the training sessions opened up difficult but necessary conversations about race privilege and bias. Matt returned to Soho a few weeks later, this time entering the store without any fanfare, no plan, and no disguise. He walked in the same casual attire as before, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but this time the atmosphere was different. The staff greeted him warmly and with genuine smiles, not initially recognizing him but treating him with the respect that every customer deserves. He took his time browsing the displays, and when he arrived at the watch section, a young sales associate approached him. "Good afternoon, sir. May I assist you with anything?" she asked in a courteous and professional tone. Matt was just perusing the store when he noticed that Ethan was still running it, but in a much more reserved manner. Ethan noticed that Matt's face was slightly flushed, but this time he didn't panic. Instead, he nodded respectfully, his expression one of silent acknowledgement. Matt nodded back and carried on perusing. The transformation had begun, and although the recollection of the incident persisted, he was aware that he had completed what was required, the business benefited, and he felt at peace as he walked out of the store and back onto the busy streets of Soho. He had built his empire to be a beacon of excellence and quality, but now it was also a beacon of something even more significant: respect and dignity for everyone. If you like the story, I'm sure the next one that comes on screen will move you. Don't forget to subscribe. Click like and then notification bell. Thank you. And I'll see you at the following one.